Goedemorgen. Good morning. Um, I is a door, a small little jewel of a book by Philip Renai, and we're at chapter 4, which is called The Medicine. Here we go. After having considered the view on I by the big three of the 20th century Advaita, it would be useful to conclude with a kind of summary. I'd like to do this on the basis of the concept I am, which we described in the last chapter. As far as I know, Nisargadatta Maharaj never said, I is a door. Yet he did, in fact, say a few times, I am is a door. As described in the last chapter, Nisargadatta considered I am as something very specific, some level between the levels of the absolute and the individual. From the perspective of the Advaita tradition, this might be called revolutionary. It is true, this concept had already been given to him by his teacher, Siddha Rameswar Maharaj. However, neither Ramana Maharshi nor Atmananda, for example, interpreted the expression I am in this way. Ramana, for instance, said, You say, I am speaking, I am working, etc. Hyphenate I am in all of them. Thus, I am. That is the abiding and fundamental reality. If the mind is turned within, it becomes still in course of time, and that I am alone prevails. I am is the whole truth. In the case of Ramanas, I am, there is no question whatsoever of a temporal phenomenon, a level that can still be transcended. I have the impression that Nisargadatta's use of the expression I am is a kind of in between level, and that still causes much confusion with the readers. Hence, I want to explain more deeply and want to go again into this in between level and into a possible connection with both other teachers on this subject, if necessary by the use of different terms. As a starting point, I want to use the quote that was also highlighted in the last chapter. That quote ends as follows. The knowledge of I am is the greatest foe and the greatest friend. Although it might be your greatest foe, if you propitiate it properly, it will turn around and lead you to the highest state. End of quote. This statement puts into words the great mystery of duality, the mystery of something that simultaneously is true and untrue, that simultaneously is your biggest friend and your worst enemy. Nisargadatta repeatedly calls the knowledge I am the beginning of all duality, the root of it. It is important to see that this statement refers to a beginning that can be observed, something that can be observed like an object. At least, partly, this is the case. The point is that it is an object as well as not being an object. It is right here that everything comes together. If you recognize this, you can also understand why Nisargadatta talks so utterly paradoxically about it. The feeling I am is subject as well as object. At this point, the true moment of separation occurs. It is mercurial, super fast. At one moment it seems to be an object, the next moment it seems to be subject. It is the subject because it is the experiencing element in all experiences, and the object because it can be observed as experience itself, an object that is always the same. Nisargadatta's words about this come down to you are this. No, on the contrary, you are not this. Sometimes even in the same sentence, for example, this knowledge which you are, which is an outcome of the food body, is not you. What is so important about the remark that the I am feeling is also an object is that it is easy for everybody to make contact with this objective aspect. Everybody is used to dealing with objects. Nisargadatta is saying that you are permitted to start with the easiest, the directly tangible, experiential aspect. Although this object I am can be your enemy, you can at least notice it, feel it, experience it as such by paying full attention to it. In fact, it is unmasked in this way. And a quote: once you catch hold of that principle, which moves about in various disguises, there is an end to illusion. End of quote. A new heading: the root of the mistake is the medicine. The mistake, the belief in duality as being reality, already starts prior to the person. The mistake already starts at a level you may call universal. This is what all holy books and mythologies are speaking about, like the fall. The multiplicity of individuals directly stems from this point, and yet, within all these individuals, this point, the I amness, is identical. By reducing it to a simple object, it can be useful because it isolates the misconception of multiplicity. This way it can serve as an instrument, not unlike a microscope or telescope. It sharpens our eye as to what exactly is this birth. If we truly realize that this universal feeling I am is the root of all separation and dilemma, then the implication is that one can no longer believe that this root is to be discovered in your personal past with its karmic content. The root is universal, and the power of what you may call your personal past or karma only provides it with a specific content, like a color. The root precedes this. It is on the hinge between freedom and bondage. As the root is still on the borderline, it can be used as a medicine. It is a medicine that cures you from falling under the spell of the belief in a separate person. In all teachings, the liberating, healing element is the most important. Hence, I want to specifically treat the I amness as a medicine and to take it literally for the moment as a pill, for the simple reason that the feeling I am is also an object that can be observed. This medicine is experience in itself. This is in accordance with the linguistic usage of Atmananda, who used the English term experience literally. Probably wouldn't have interpreted it as a term for a kind of in-between level. In Atma Darshan, he says, quote, in one's experience, strictly so called, there is neither thought nor external object present. It is the state in which all alone one abides in oneself. Objects of perception, believed to be the cause of experience, tempt the ignorant, but no such cause appears in one's experience. Capital E. It follows that experience has no cause. And again, experience with a capital E. End of quote. Atmananda sometimes used a capital E to emphasize what he meant with experience, as is illustrated by the following quotation. If the experience has many objects, it is not experience, capital E. You are superimposing objects upon your experience. Your experience is one and the same, always. End of quote. Elsewhere, he clearly said that experience is something where in fact diversity does not exist. Quote, two are not seen. Experience is one thing. You experience only one thing. Your experience is only in relation to the one. You experience only one thing, one thing. End of quote. A large part of Atmananda's teaching consists of the invitation to find out for yourself what an apparently commonplace element, such as experience, really is. Quote, always contemplating the nature of experience itself will bring about this merger of thoughts. End of quote. A new heading, the pure unmixed beingness quality. The pure unmixed beingness quality. Shuddha Sattva. We're speaking about this nature, the true nature, also here in this chapter. The pill depicted here, there's a how you say? There's a picture on the previous image, but I can't show it to you, of a kind of a pill. And so the pill depicted here is divided into two halves by a groove in order to indicate the primordial split, the place of the possible fall or temptation. Also, it is the place where the enemy can convert into the friend. Above the groove has been indicated that which is the true nature of the entire pill, that which in fact is the essence of all aspects of the pill. The terms used underneath the groove indicate the general characteristics of the pill and show something of its veiling element of temptation and identification. Actually, of course, the elements depicted here as two halves are completely interwoven. The pill illustrates the singleness of the twofold. The staggering multiple has been reduced to a simple two. There are some terms which can be used for the entire pill, for above as well as beneath the groove. I am, being, beingness, experience, presence, jnana, and especially the multi-interpretable term the self, or Atman. The term Shuddha Sattva perhaps indicates best the difference between the top and the bottom. It means pure, unmixed beingness quality. As is described in chapter 3, Sattva is the beingness quality. It is one of the three qualities, gunas, that is sattva, rajas, restlessness, and tamas, sloth, which, merged with each other, bear all manifestation. Likewise, the pill's entirety consists of the merger of all these three qualities. Shuddha means pure, unmixed. Nisargadatta explains, quote, pure sattva is perfect freedom from sloth, tamas, and restlessness, rajas. Sattva is pure and strong always. It's like the sun. It may seem obscured by clouds and dust, but only from the point of view of the perceiver. End of quote. This Shuddha Sattva is the healing element in the pill, the actual medicine that gives freedom. It may be called healing because it is prepared to sacrifice itself in the same way as soap powder gets totally dissolved when used to cleanse textiles. It is true, it is still one of the gunas and is therefore called sa-guna, filled with qualities. However, in its pureness, it no longer holds on to anything, and in this way it ultimately turns out to be nirguna, that's that which is without qualities, and precedes experience. In the famous Advaita scripture, Viveka Chudamani, it is stated, quote, Tamas is overcome by Rajas and Sattva. Rajas is overcome by Sattva. Sattva dissolves of its own accord when pure, Shuddha. End of quote. Ramana Maharshi, who once translated this text, repeatedly spoke about Shuddha Sattva and about the purification, Shuddhi, of the mind. For instance, he said, quote, of the three gunas, the rajas and tamas aspects cling to and identify with the body. The remaining one, which is pure sattva, is alone the natural characteristic of the mind, and this stands clinging to the reality. However, in the pure sattvic state, the I thought is no longer really a thought, it is the heart itself. The state in which the pure sattva mind shines, clinging to the self, is called aham spurana, that is, I. I'm going to read this quote one more time. Of these three gunas, the rajas and tamas aspects cling to and identify with the body. The remaining one, which is pure sattva, is alone the natural characteristic of the mind, and this stands clinging to the reality. However, in the pure sattvic state, the I thought is no longer really a thought, it is the heart itself. The state in which the pure sattva mind shines, clinging to the self, is called aham spurana, that is, I. All passages in which Ramana was speaking about the aspect of cleansing, Shuddha and Shuddhi, could be considered as pointing to a kind of in-between level. Once talking about the translation from sleep to the waking state, he emphasized the importance of a transition stage for realization as well. Quote, the self is pure consciousness in sleep. It evolves as aham, I, without the idam, this, in the transition stage, and manifests as aham, I, and idam, this, in the waking state. The individual's experience is by means of aham, I only. So he must aim at realization in the way indicated, in hence by means of the transitional I. Otherwise, the sleep experience doesn't matter to him. If the transitional I be realized, the substratum is found, and that leads to the goal. End of quote. It is interesting to mention a passage in which Atmananda too uses a terminology of three stages. He does so in reply to a question about Spurana. Quote, the natural state of the I principle in man is unmanifested. This becomes manifest in the case of human activities in three distinct stages. One, one, the unmanifested state of luminosity itself. Two, becoming manifest as I know I am or as self luminosity. And three, becoming manifested as objects. The second of the above three stages is not recognized at all by the ordinary man. So the three stages, I read them one more time for clarity. The unmanifested state, one is the unmanifested state of luminosity itself. Two is becoming manifest as I know I am, or as self luminosity. And three, becoming manifested as objects. So the second of the above three stages is not recognized at all by ordinary man. But the jnani alone recognizes it and perceives it clearly sometimes before a perception. From the first stage to the second is only a subjective change to I am without losing its identity. This is called spurana. It has no object, but it has become self-luminous. That's all. When the I principle comes to the third stage of perception, it becomes manifest as a jiva. The I principle is pure and attributeless and is added onto the attribute every time. In other words, the unmanifest I principle first prepares itself to manifest by adopting the subjective change as I know I am, then takes on the attribute and becomes clearly manifested. End of quote. The new heading. The knowing quality is what liberates. Unmixed sattva, pure beingness quality, is a reflection of absolute reality or absolute awareness. It is like a totally clear mirror, the beingness quality which, as a mirror of absolute awareness, is itself the knowing quality. As Nisargadatta's linguistic usage sometimes tends to emphasize that consciousness alone exists thanks to the body, he often plainly indicated consciousness as being a product of the body. The confusion may sometimes arise that consciousness is actually only something chemical or biological. Of course, that's not true. In the next quotation, something entirely different is stressed, and as far as I'm concerned, touches the core. Here's the quote. The moon dancing on the water is seen in the water, but it is caused by the moon in the sky and not by the water. End of quote. In other words, the light dancing in the body is experienced in the body as consciousness. However, this is caused by the light and not by the body. Should this not be the case, freedom would not be inherently given, but superimposed and dependent on conditional factors such as prarabdha, the karma to be worked out in this lifetime. Therefore, consciousness exists thanks to the light, absolute awareness. Consciousness is its reflection, even if indeed the fact remains that such a reflection of the absolute light can only exist when a physical body makes such a mirror possible. It is light itself, but in the experiential sense of the word. If you look within consciousness to see what enables consciousness to be, You will notice that it is the light which facilitates it, the bestowing, knowing source of everything. It is not a light, an observable source from which a radiance can be noticed, but incomprehensible, untraceable light. It is that which makes everything else possible and imparts reality to our present consciousness. It is true, this consciousness, excuse me, it is true, this consciousness, in the way Nisargadatta uses it, is just as unreal in the ultimate sense as mind itself. However, by abiding and resting in this in-between level, you can gradually recognize what always already is real within this consciousness, the knowing element, the Shuddha Sattva element. In this way, you can also recognize that this is the liberating element, because the knowing element is not attached to anything. Like the contemporary Dzogchen teacher Chokni Rinpoche says, the knowing quality itself remains undistracted. End of quote. In other words, attention can be distracted, but the knowing quality enabling attention cannot. New heading. The causal body. Distraction of attention means that you are being withdrawn from experience itself to fascinating experiences, which for their part divert and drag you into the next riveting subject of matter. This is what the bottom part of the pill in the picture illustrates. This bottom part is a pointer to the cause of multiplicity, hence the name causal body for it. As already mentioned in a quote by Maharaj, Nisargadatta Maharaj in chapter 3, simplicity or singularity is very hard to endure. Experience itself, without something to be experienced, is hard to sustain. The thirst for experiencing something is inbuilt from birth. And when you experience something, you soon want more of it, or, if it's negative, less of it. It seems there is always something more pleasant or beautiful to be experienced than what is actually occurring. This incessant thirst retains an element of seduction, something which tempts us. Seduction may sound moralistic, however, it is a term that covers this phenomenon very well. In the words of Nisargadatta, if you get involved with the flow of Maya, there will be misery. Do you understand what the flow is? All that Maya, the activities. You try to derive pleasure from the activities. This is the product of beingness. Be still, remain still in your beingness. End of quote. In fact, seduction amounts to the suggestion that you should have to go somewhere, that you should be different, better, further, more free. The bottom part of the pill indicates going to instead of abiding. One could say that letting you be carried away by that which seduces comes down to giving credence to the power of your past, to the power of latent tendencies, the vasanas, instead of enduring that you remain still within the present touch, the present form. The binding aspect of the I am principle consists in the creation of a personal history, the creation of an I figure, a form that persists. The binding force itself has often been called causal body, which means a kind of storehouse of the latent tendencies and the primordial beginning of individuality of a jiva. Fascination is also a good description for this binding aspect. This word means enchantment, dazzle, etc. In fascination, you are in fact captivated, tied up. Because objectless abiding is hard to sustain, we would rather see ourselves being hooked on an object, which gives us something to hold on to. We are fascinated by our own creative power. Our mind is a master in creating, and we are fascinated by its products, all of its stories. In fascination lies the seduction. Being fascinated means non understanding. We are being continually lured away from understanding, jnana, the understanding that we are and always have been free, the freedom of light itself. In the Advaita tradition, this non understanding or ignorance, ajnana, is also referred to as the causal body we just mentioned. It is the causing element in the self. It is the very beginning of a series. It is something that comprises a sequel. It is that which within us, it is that within us which causes now the creation of a form and which seduces us to maintain and consolidate this form. It seduces us into not recognizing this form as mere present form of consciousness, which means something which dies immediately afterwards and is replaced again by another form. So, this creating forms and not recognizing them as consciousness is what is meant by the term causal. The causal body brings about your losing sight of the fact that you are always new, also now, also now. I am is an ever fresh beginning. The bringing about of not recognizing this occurs through the latent tendencies, which makes you cling to the manifestations as soon as they are there, so that the form can continue to exist. The term causal shows that it is the causing of something else. It does not abide in what it is itself. Just as the upper part of the pill can be briefly called Shuddha Sattva, the bottom part can be condensed best as the causal body. On this body, Nisargadatta says, there is something that may be called the memory body or causal body, a record of all that was thought, wanted, and done. It is like a cloud of images held together. End of quote. This holding together of images by means of the tendencies, samskaras or vasanas, which it contains, triggers the suggestion that you are a person, an individual, or a soul. This suggestion leads us to identify ourselves with this one individual who seems to be separated from other individuals. In the Advaita tradition, the germ of jivanus, the primordial suggestion that you are an individual or a soul, a jiva, is regarded more or less synonymous with the causal body of the self. Ramana Maharshi too shows that the germ of the jiva in fact is similar to the most refined of the three bodies, that catalyst which has the power to suggest or create. Quote, man has three bodies, the gross one made of the five elements, the sukshima or subtle one made of manas, and prana, and then the jiva. End of quote. Jiva is a term which is often used ambiguously. This also occurs in the traditional Advaita scriptures. It is applied both for an eternal, in essence real soul, which by mistake does not see its own true nature, as well as for the mistake itself, that is, the assumption of being someone separate, an individual, jiva, divided from others, separate from others. We would do well, as far as I'm concerned, to limit ourselves in our language to the letter. Ramana frankly said, people think that they are jivas. In fact, there are no jivas. End of quote. Consequently, jiva or individual is just a temporary way of speaking in order to indicate the restricted form of a body and mind in which you exist and which is comparable to a house. You are not that. New heading. Experience is the last object. The aid rendered by the in-between level of I am as a door or medicine lies in discovering here the root of the mistake, instead of searching for this root within the karmic past of the jiva. Ramana said, the more you rectify your karma, the more it accumulates. Find the root of karma and cut it off. End of quote. The root of karma is here, within the present experience. We can continue our past, that is to say, our karma, or we now can recognize and acknowledge freedom. This is the point where we can go in either direction. The responsibility is up to us to see what we really want. Abiding here in experience, capital E, itself, in consciousness, we can recognize that we won't have to be underneath the central groove of the pill in the illustration at all, meaning that we are not fated to continue our past. It's vital to notice that this root, this cause or seed, actually doesn't exist. Due to attention to this point, to the recognition of it, you may discover there is no beginning. What you come across in this recognition is only emptiness, openness, light, not a something. Here you can see what is meant in the various traditions by the term illusion, Maya. Something appears, but the moment you really look for it, there's only seeing. This is what in the beginning of this chapter was called, it is mercurial, super fast. It begins now. Searching for the beginning already is within the sense of fascination. Fascination and identification have then begun already. Nisargadatta said about this, quote, people think I am the cause, but I'm not the cause. I'm the support. The world is there spontaneously without any seed. Creation is seedless, but the world is full of seeds and procreation is going on daily. End of quote. Is it possible to say something truthful about what multiplicity is? The next statement is from one of the Upanishads, which I consider a beautiful answer to this quandary. Taking birth, you have your faces everywhere. End of quote. Nisargadatta also commented on the same theme. The one witness reflects itself in the countless bodies as I am, as experience, capital E. As long as the bodies, however subtle, last, the I am appears as many. Beyond the body, there's only one. There's only the one. End of quote. I am is one. It is one object. We may also express it differently, namely, that it's the last object. This last object is the same in everybody. There's no difference whatsoever in I am, in the variety of individuals. Abiding here, you are already free from fascination. To this one object points the well-known words, the Guru, God, your own knowledge, I am, these three are one. All three are terms for the last object, within and outside, this. You would do well in confining yourself to this, whatever this may be. In other words, stay with the present object, present consciousness or experience. As long as an object appears, there is a witness of it. You are that. You yourself are not an object. You are constantly looking from yourself already now, that is, from light, your own luminosity. The witness is not something that exists as such. It does exist only when an object appears. The one turns itself into a second one, that is, I am, experience. But as soon as the witness is recognized in experience, knowledge, jnana, becomes understanding, jnana or vijnana. Here the medicine dissolves as it's been digested. There is no second person or object. This turns out to be the same as that, the undivided reality. The so-called pill is just a temporary mirror. It only reflects the light. And I cannot be seen. Thanks to the mirror, you see a reflection of I. That is the aid, so that you can recognize. I is already and always light itself, the constant source of all seeing. Via the mirror of I am, I can see that I am not this reflection, the reflected image of I am. I am always the luminous seeing as such, light itself. And this ends chapter 4 of I am, or of I is a door. Let me see. There is chapter 5 with a short description of biographies of Ramana, Atmananda, and Nisargadatta, and I'll be reading that tomorrow. So have a great day. Bye for now.